So Don't Move is the new Netflix original film following a grieving woman in a secluded forest who encounters a killer who injects her with a paralytic drug, and now she's got to run, fight, and hide from this crazy bastard before not only she's paralyzed, but before he's able to catch up to her, then presumably rape and kill her. And yes, this shit is pretty wild. Now, I'd be lying if I said the comments underneath this trailer didn't entertain me. I mean, it all started with Don't Breathe and The Happening and Don't Breathe, Don't Make a Sound in a Quiet Place and The Silence, Don't See in Bird Box, and now Don't Move. Next one should be Don't Live. Okay, for someone who is supposed to be paralyzed after 20 minutes, she sure does get around to a lot of places in the trailer. Oh, and this is definitely my favorite one I've seen so far. Now we need Don't Blink, Don't Pee, Don't Poo, and the last movie, Don't Do Anything. But all jokes aside, before we get into more jokes, this movie actually isn't bad at all. It's an interesting premise that gets explored pretty vastly. It nails the entertainment and suspense, and the performances were actually fairly decent. I would say the only issue that I had with the film, which is basically the main issue they were always going to run into in this movie, is that sometimes stupid things have to occur to extend the runtime. Now, I think a lot of people would argue that you gotta suspend a high level of disbelief to make it through this film and actually have a good time, which actually might be true, but it would be a waste for me to review this film and not point out those exceptions that have to be made and the rules that have to be bent throughout the film to make it an entertaining movie and to have this plot progression. I mean, I doubt they could have made this film anywhere near as entertaining without bending the rules a little here and there. But overall, it's a fun popcorn flick. I mean, I can't hate on it too much. But on a more serious note, it's just kind of stupid. But let's actually have some fun and go through the film with the more logical perspective, because honestly, it's just too much fun not to talk about. And also be sure to stick around for all the reasons that would have ended this film realistically before it even got started good, and all the moments that make it kind of stupid, and even sometimes a lot of stupid. Now for a quick rating, I'd give this film a solid 6.5 out of 10, and maybe even a 7. I'd say it's worth a watch and you'd probably enjoy yourself. But anyway, let's finally jump straight into it. So the movie opens up with showing us Iris, a woman seemingly having trouble sleeping as she stares over at a toy boat on her nightstand. She leaves the house while her husband is sleeping, then takes a pocket knife and leaves her phone, which we find out later was left on purpose. And she takes a long trip alone out to Macy Big Sur State Park to her son's makeshift memorial site, which isn't a real park by the way, but it is based on a real park in California called Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park, and this was more than likely done to not paint this place in a negative light and deter viewers from ever wanting to visit this place, thinking that maybe this story is real, but I doubt that worked, because this film would definitely make you not want to go hiking alone anywhere, let alone this big ass fictional park. Anyway, we come to find out that Iris is here to commit suicide and jump from the same ledge that her son fell from because of the guilt she feels for not keeping a closer eye on him and preventing his death. But during this time is where she meets the very kind stranger Richard, who sees what she's planning to do and attempts to talk her out of it by sharing a personal guilt story about how his wife Chloe died in a car crash and how he blames himself, which we do come to find out later isn't completely true at all. The character Richard, who we find out's real name is Andrew later, doesn't seem to tell complete lies. He just twists the truth to work in his favor, which is definitely still lying. But we come to find out throughout the film that he always adds in a little truth in just about every lie he tells. And we come to find out that he actually believes his lies. He's actually convinced himself that he thinks what he's saying is true, which is definitely what a psychopathic killer would do, but I'm just saying. But after Richard is able to talk Iris out of taking her own life, they walk back to the parking area together, where Richard purposely parked too close to her vehicle and uses a baton stun gun to shock the shit out of her and kidnap her. And this is now the first sort of questionable thing that happens, because Iris could have closed her door to create a walkway for her to put more distance between her and Richard, but she doesn't do this, which results in her being kidnapped. Now, of course, this is arguable because she wants to try to squeeze in her car, but it's clear that she can't really get in that way. So instead, she just acts like she's completely trapped, like there's nowhere to go, when she could just close her door and put more space between her and this crazy guy. But like I said, that's arguable, and I have a lot more solid, stupid moments later. So let's move on. One thing you'll also come to realize is that this movie has a lot of perfectly timed moments, which you'll really get to see what I mean by that later. But Iris wakes up in the back of this guy's car and is able to distract him while she cuts herself free with that pocket knife she remembered to grab from home. Then she fights him after he says he's planning to take her home and braid her damn hair. And all of this leads to them crashing head on into a tree. Then the two of them continue to fight, falling out of the car. And here's where Iris learns that Richard has a backup plan to paralyze her ass if for some strange reason he had forgotten to, I don't know, maybe check her pockets for a knife or anything leading to her being able to break free. He tells her that once the drug kicks in, she'll have about 20 minutes before she's completely paralyzed. At minute 1, she won't be able to hold anything or dial a phone for help. At minute 10, her legs will begin to tingle. At minute 15, her legs will completely give out. At 18 minutes, her breathing will slow down and ultimately she won't be able to speak anymore. And then of course we already know what happens at 20 minutes. So after learning this information, instead of fighting, she decides to run off into the woods to see how far she can make it. So at this point she has no signal, no one can hear her scream given the secluded location, and she's going to be completely paralyzed once again in 20 minutes while he slowly chases her through the woods. Shit. Also, Apple is getting plenty of advertisement and product placement in this because her Apple Watch is used as a timer so she can track how long she has. And it was also used back in the car when she tried to send an emergency SOS. But as mentioned before, she has no signal. So as Iris's fingers, legs, and just general mobility begin to break down, she finds a place to hide. But unfortunately, now the damn ants are trying to kill her as well. So Iris just ain't catching no breaks right now. So she ends up screaming, which of course Richard can hear because he's nearby. But luckily for her, she's able to crawl into a river nearby and ends up floating downstream. Now while floating downstream, Iris is able to latch onto a tree and slowly pull herself out of the river, where at this time she has about 11 minutes left. Between now and the 20-minute mark, she pulls herself onto some grass where she finally runs out of time and she becomes completely paralyzed. Now we don't actually ever get a clear time on how long the effects of the drug are supposed to last, but given the context from Richard, it sounds like it's supposed to possibly last all weekend, because after catching up to Iris in the woods, he tells her before she jumps into the river that the chase will last for about an hour, and then after that they'll have the whole weekend together. So either the injection of the drug is supposed to last that long, meaning all weekend, or he was planning to give her another dose. Now while Iris is laying on the grass completely paralyzed, we can see that there's someone cutting the grass. And there's this whole new suspenseful moment that happens where we think that there's a possibility that this guy actually might run her ass over with the lawnmower for not seeing her. Because the visual we have from her point of view is the fact that she can't really see him. So it creates a lot of cool suspense, but we know that this guy sitting on this lawnmower is seeing every damn thing, and of course he's gonna see her, which he does. And another neat thing that happens here in the film, which you can say is pretty cool, is that he jumps off the lawnmower and he starts talking to Iris, and he realizes that she can't talk or move. But she is able to communicate with him through blinking once for yes and blinking twice for no. And of course he's able to find out that she's in trouble but she's not hurt, and that he's going to call help for her. So this nice old man named William grabs a wheelbarrow and rolls her ass inside. Eventually Richard pops up with a bullshit story about how him and his wife got into a wreck and how she has mental health issues and how he just really wants his wife back. He almost convinces William at first, and William almost reveals to Richard that he has Iris. That's until Richard's phone rings and the man realizes that Richard was lying about not having his phone and losing it in the car crash. Unfortunately, this all results in a struggle where Richard kills William, and since he's unable to find Iris, he pours gasoline all over William's house and burns it down. But Iris is still inside during this time, being hidden behind the couch. And this is sort of where the movie begins to get kinda stupid. I mean, it happens a little bit before now, but this is mainly where it begins to get kinda stupid. Because really, this should be the end for Iris. This is where she would technically be dead for sure. So by this time, as mentioned earlier, Iris shouldn't be able to move at all. So she tries to get Richard's attention by tapping on the floor because she doesn't want to be burnt down in this house, of course. But she really shouldn't be able to move her fingers or tap on the floor in the first place. And although this does fail to get Richard's attention anyway, the next thing she does is supposed to be even more impossible. She's able to grab the string to the blinds and slowly close them as Richard watches. He just happens to be looking at the blinds as she's able to slowly close them, which of course results in him saving her, which also buys her more time to live. So Richard puts her in the truck and they take off together, but he eventually gets a call from his wife and daughter about how they're planning to come visit him at the cabin this weekend. And we get a close-up during this time of Iris's eyes, and of course we can see that she can see that Richard was definitely lying about his wife being dead, which I mean, big news flash there, right? The damn serial killer's been lying this whole time. How about that? The damn serial killer lies. I can't believe it. And of course this is going to fuck up all of his serial killer and raping plans if the family is trying to come down while he's trying to do all of this. But during this time we find out that this is supposedly his personal time to decompress away from home. And we find out that he's been spending more and more time away from his family, which means he's more than likely been on a roll lately with snatching up and killing women hiking alone in the area. Afterwards though, they pull in at a gas station where Richard hops out and we can see William's house on fire from a distance, over the trees, and we also see a fire truck and ambulance heading that way, which means the area is getting hot literally and figuratively, and he's about to have more problems on his hands. Now, the gas station scene is pretty intense like many scenes throughout the film, but this one hits a bit harder because she's surrounded by many bystanders that could help only if they knew. During the scene, Richard has to go inside to pay for gas, and a little boy walks up and stares through the window at Iris after she's able to unbuckle her seatbelt and shift her body on the door. Lots of movement happening here for a woman who's supposed to be temporarily paralyzed, but completely paralyzed. But the little boy tries to speak to her, causing his mom to walk over and exchange looks with Iris, which Iris definitely has a help me please kind of look on her face. But nothing happens and Richard comes out and they drive away. But the woman stares at the truck as they drive off, hinting that she may have done something because she is seen holding her phone as she's watching them drive away. So they are implying here that the woman is suspicious. But the kind of stupid moment that happens here is the fact that Iris just completely forgets about the fact that she has an Apple Watch in this moment. She's in an area that may have service, or she could set off an alarm or SOS siren to get someone's attention, and this would only require the action of a couple of taps and holding the button, which she's already proven that she can do when she pressed the button to release herself from the seat belt, and by the several times she was able to tap on the floor when she was trying to get Richard's attention over at William's house so she wouldn't get burnt with everything else. So the fact that this wasn't a thought in this moment was actually pretty stupid, especially when she had many attempts at trying to use her Apple Watch earlier on in the film. But anyway, they drive back to Richard's car and he quickly changes clothes and moves his zip ties, wipes, and another syringe over to William's truck because he plans to tow his vehicle out of there. But before he has a chance to do this, a police officer pulls up and tells Richard that he got a call about the truck and wants to know if anyone needed assistance, meaning that the woman, more than likely from the gas station, did call the police. Plus, we already know that this is confirmed when the police officer tells Richard that he was provided with the license plate number, meaning that there was no mistake. At this time in the film is where we finally get Richard's real name, which is Andrew. And we know that this is actually true because he's not stupid enough to lie to a cop about his ID when he actually has to show it to him. Now, of course, this could be a fake ID, but he says Andrew and the cop is able to verify it, so I'm thinking this is accurate. But Richard comes up with a lie to almost get out of this. But since Iris's movement and voice is slowly starting to come back, she's able to say, "Help me," to the officer, who unfortunately turns out to have the worst damn reaction time of any modern day cop, because any other cop would have been really quick with his trigger finger. Because it takes this guy 5 business days before it registers to him that Andrew is a threat. But Andrew bashes his damn head in with the towing hook, and at this point, the damn guy's just on a roll. He's on a roll. There's no stopping him. And as we already could guess, killing this officer definitely just put him in deep shit. So this streak of madness he's had going on seems like it might be possibly coming to a halt. But at this time, Andrew puts the dead officer back in his car, snatches out the dash cam and covers his car in gasoline to blow it up. Once he gets back in the car, the camera zooms out just enough to show us that the syringe is no longer on the dashboard, of course hinting at the fact that Iris can now move well enough to have grabbed it from there, which now introduces another question. If she was able to grab it from there while Andrew was away, why not use it on him in this moment? Well, apparently she's waiting for a better time to use it, which once again, I must admit, it's kind of stupid because she really doesn't know when she'll actually have another chance to try using something like this. So why wait? Now, of course, you could argue that she's just waiting for her motor skills to come back a little bit more, but hey, she was able to move well enough to go ahead and grab it from the dashboard, which means she had to lift her arm and use her fingers and hands and make a fist. So, sounds like it's well enough now to me. She later gets more info on the story from Andrew about his previous wife or girlfriend, Chloe, and we find out that after he watched her die, he told her thank you from the satisfaction he got from watching her die and how it made him feel like a god, and how that was basically the inception of his serial killer arc. So Iris ends up pissing Andrew off a little bit more when she brings up Chloe, to the point where he wants to turn the truck around and take her to a lake, where his new plan is to now drown her at the lake or slit her throat and then dump her body in the lake. I mean, it's definitely one of the two, but before they get out at the lake, this is the moment where Iris tries to use the syringe. But unfortunately, there's a bullshit excuse we get as to why she can't use her thumb to inject the drug. Andrew tells her that she'll only get small, uncoordinated bursts of energy as her movement slowly comes back, which I was like, whatever. Honestly, the whole film would have been over here, just like it would have been at a lot of earlier moments, if Andrew would have taken the drug and instead of arrogantly shooting it into the air, he uses it on Iris again. In the beginning of the film, Andrew gave this whole speech about having a backup plan in case the zip ties had failed, and he explained that that's why he uses the drug, to have a backup. But then at this time, he decides to stop following his own established routines, logic, and rules, and decides that he'll waste the paralytic drug and just rely on the zip ties. Okay. This logic for the antagonist, especially after the long speeches, just seemed kinda stupid. But anyway, Andrew drags Iris to a pier with a brick, and the plan seems to be to sink her to the bottom of the lake. Then as a last-ditch effort, Iris starts crying and asked Andrew to take her son's toy boat out of her pocket, basically as a final request before her death. And she uses this opportunity to get close enough to Andrew to take his knife and stab him in the neck. Then she rocks the boat, causing him to have terrible aim and drop his gun, and then he ends up falling over into the lake. And honestly, in this moment, the stab to the neck should have been enough to kill this guy, especially after falling over into the lake. But it's a movie, so of course he has to come back and tries to climb back into the boat, which leads to Iris shooting him, and even after that, he has enough power to swim to shore. Jesus. Iris, on the other hand, let off so many shots that she shot holes in the boat, causing it to sink. But luckily she lived and was able to swim back to shore while having both hands and feet zip tied together. So once again, this is just another one of those stupid cinematic moments where apparently she gets all her motor skills back at the moment she goes underwater. And it comes back so well that she's able to swim back to shore with her hands zip tied together. Now personally, I think it would have made more sense for her to use the knife that Andrew dropped on the boat to cut the zip ties before the boat sunk, but whatever. Once she makes it back to the pier, she can hear Andrew off in the distance gasping for air as he's slowly dying. And she leans down and says the same thing to him that he claimed that he said to Chloe during her last breath, which was, "Thank you," which I must admit that was a nice touch. And the boat, in a way, was sort of like a metaphor for her son saving her, and for her not forgiving herself for not originally trying to fight for her life and finding the courage to move on instead of giving up and trying to commit suicide. The boat was also a sign of foreshadowing, telling us where the final moments of all of this would eventually take place. Now the film for sure has its moments, but it's also got some stupid stuff mixed in here and there, just like a lot of movies. And many moments that would have brought all of this to an end a lot sooner if previous logic shown earlier in the film was also applied later in the film. But this is just a fun video to poke fun and a review of my thoughts on Don't Move. And if you've seen the film already, please be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. Also, before I go guys, I'm starting back up my Patreon, trying to add more value over there and to my YouTube memberships. I'm going to be adding early access videos, going to be doing a lot of custom short type videos and reviews and just around the house shit that I tend to watch that I don't really tend to talk about on YouTube. Also, if you guys have any personal recommendations or any personal questions you want me to answer, I also have a plan for that as well for people who would rather custom content rather than the random things I tend to post there. So please be sure to check that out because I'm definitely trying to make this full-time content creator dream happen. But as always guys, thank you for watching.